The Grand Chamber of the Galaxy Council stretched before Ambassador Jack Daniels, like a cathedral built for giants. Massive stone pillars rose toward a domed ceiling, adorned with a holographic display of the cosmos stars, twinkling against a backdrop of swirling nebulae. He straightened his formal diplomatic uniform and felt the familiar weight of the translator implant at the base of his skull. 3 years of negotiations had led to this moment. "You seem tense, Ambassador," observed Paula White, his aide and confidant of 5 years. Her eyes, sharp as ever, missed nothing. "Your left hand is doing that thing again." Jack glanced down at his fingers, which had indeed begun to tap against his thigh, a nervous habit he'd never quite conquered. 3 years, Paula. 3 years of sitting at their table, following their protocols, eating their food, and practicing their customs. He took a deep breath. And for what to be treated like children begging for scraps. The chamber had been designed by the Vrians, the oldest among the council races. Like everything they created, it emphasized grandeur and tradition. The curved rows of seats arranged in a hierarchy of age-eldest species at the center, newest at the periphery. Humanity's position couldn't have been clearer outer rim, furthest from the decision-makers. High Chancellor Zextrol occupied the central podium, his elongated cranium and silver-scaled skin catching the light as he conversed with a group of fellow Vrians. 800 years old, if the rumors were true. The Vrian hadn't so much as acknowledged Jack's entrance. "Ambassador Kuval is watching you," Paula whispered. Jack looked up to find the ancient Eldaran's eyes indeed fixed upon him. Unlike most council races, the Eldarans had shown humanity a measure of respect from the beginning. Perhaps because they remembered their own struggles for recognition millennia ago. Kuval nodded almost imperceptibly, and Jack returned the gesture. "The fragmentation in the chamber today is palpable," Paula commented, scanning the room. "The Drath delegation seems unusually subdued." Jack had noticed it too. The normally boisterous aquatic species with their vibrant coral-like growths were clustered together in hushed conversation. "Something's changed. The Council's unified front is showing cracks." "Good news for us." "Perhaps." Jack adjusted the cuffs of his uniform. "Or perhaps it means they've reached a consensus we won't like." Their conversation was interrupted by the electronic chime that signaled the start of formal proceedings. The various ambassadors moved to their designated positions, the soft hum of translator implants creating a gentle background noise as they synced to the Council's central communication system. High Chancellor Zextrol raised his 4-fingered hand, and the chamber fell silent. "This council session is now convened," he announced, his voice artificially modulated to sound pleasant to all species present. "We continue our deliberations regarding the petition of Sol System representatives for expanded territorial rights and reduced developmental oversight." Jack kept his expression neutral, though petition stung. Earth hadn't come begging, they'd come as equals, seeking fair treatment. After careful consideration of humanity's technological advancement, cultural stability factors, and historical tendencies, Zextrol continued, "This council has prepared its final offer." The air in the chamber seemed to still. Final offer. After 3 years of incremental negotiations, they were skipping ahead to ultimatums. Earth will be granted developmental rights to 5 star systems adjacent to Sol, with a mandatory oversight tax of 30% on all resource extraction for a period of 50 standard years. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Jack felt his heart sink. 5 systems was barely enough for a growing interstellar civilization. The oversight tax was highway robbery by another name. "This offer," Zextrol continued with a wave of his hand, "is generous considering humanity's relative youth among spacefaring species. The Council acknowledges your rapid advancement from planetary to interstellar travel in mere centuries. But wisdom comes with age. The oversight will benefit humanity in the long term." Jack glanced at Paula, whose face had gone pale. They both knew what this meant. The terms were worse than their minimum acceptable threshold, worse even than the preliminary offers from months ago. The Council awaits Earth's gratitude and acceptance, Zextrol concluded, settling back in his elevated seat with the confidence of someone who expected no challenge. Jack's earpiece crackled to life, a direct encrypted channel from Earth Command. Admiral Susan Miller's voice was crystal clear. Protocol Omega confirmed, Ambassador. Withdrawal authorized. He'd hoped it wouldn't come to this, but Earth had prepared for this possibility from the beginning. Jack looked around the chamber one last time, at the faces of beings who had traveled the stars, while humans were still building pyramids, yet couldn't recognize the worth of newcomers. With deliberate movements, Jack rose from his seat. The chamber quieted as he approached the central speaking platform, a courtesy rarely extended to junior members, but one the Council couldn't deny without obvious insult. High Chancellor, esteemed members of the Galaxy Council, Jack began, his voice steady. On behalf of Earth and all human colonies, I must inform you that we find these terms unacceptable. Chancellor Zextrol's expression didn't change, but his inner eyelids flickered a sign of irritation and vriens. Perhaps the ambassador misunderstands the nature of a final offer. There will be no further negotiation. No further negotiation, Jack agreed. Earth withdraws from these talks effective immediately. Now, the chamber erupted in sounds of disbelief. Jack reached to the base of his skull, and with a practiced motion removed his translator implant. The small device, a symbol of conformity to Council standards, sat in his palm for a moment before he placed it gently on the platform. Without another word, Jack turned and walked toward the chamber exit, Paula falling into step beside him. Behind them, the Council's voices had risen in a cacophony of untranslated alien languages. In the corridor outside, Paula grabbed his arm. Jack, this is insane. We can't just walk away from the galactic community. What about trade routes, defense agreements, research exchanges? Jack kept walking. It was never a community, Paula. It was a hierarchy, and we were being shown our place at the bottom. But the protocol was approved by unanimous vote of Earth's Security Council and Parliament. Jack stopped and looked at her directly. This isn't a tantrum. It's Phase 1. Paula's eyes widened. There's a Phase 2. Jack managed a cold smile. There's always a Phase 2. The diplomatic shuttle waited in the lower hangar, its engines already warmed for immediate departure. As they boarded, Jack activated his secure comm unit. Earth Command, this is Ambassador Daniels. Withdrawal complete. Initiating return to Sol. Admiral Susan Miller's face appeared on the small screen. Her expression was grim, but determined. Acknowledged, Ambassador. Welcome to the beginning of the future. Miller out. On Earth, behind the secure walls of Luna Command, Admiral Miller ended the transmission and turned to face the assembled military and political leadership of humanity. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, Protocol Omega is confirmed. Ambassador Daniels has withdrawn from the Galaxy Council, as anticipated. Her fingers danced across the control panel, bringing up a series of classified files. It's time to activate Phase 2. The orbital shipyards around Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn simultaneously went dark on all standard communication channels, their transponders falling silent. Then, one by one, they came back online, but on new frequencies using protocols unknown to the Galaxy Council. Across the solar system, research stations that had been publicly designated for astronomical studies revealed their true purposes, powering up weapon systems and defensive barriers that had been developed in secret. Hidden manufacturing facilities began producing ships with designs that incorporated reverse-engineered alien technology combined with human innovations. The defense grid, known as Protocol Beta, a network of automated platforms positioned at strategic points throughout Sol, activated its stealth systems. Years of technological espionage, careful study of alien ships that had entered human space, and humanity's inherent creativity had culminated in this moment. Earth was preparing not just for isolation, but for independence. In the Galaxy Council chamber, Jack Daniels' empty seat became a subject of ridicule among certain factions. Typical of an immature species, sniffed Ambassador Drex of the Volgari Confederation. When they don't get their way, they flee like larvae from light. High Chancellor Zextrol seemed pleased with himself. They will return when hunger for technology and trade becomes too great, perhaps with a better understanding of their place. Only Ambassador Kuval of the Eldorans remained silent, his ancient eyes thoughtful, as he studied the abandoned translator on the central platform. When the session ended, Kuval approached Zextrol privately. "Chancellor, I fear we may have miscalculated with the humans." Zextrol dismissed the concern with a wave. "They are barely 3 centuries into spaceflight. What possible threat could they pose?" "Not all strength comes with age," Kuval cautioned. "The humans achieved in 3 centuries what took most of us millennia. Their adaptability is concerning." "Your fondness for primitive species clouds your judgment, old friend," Zextrol replied. "The humans will crawl back. They have nowhere else to go." But the humans didn't crawl back. Weeks passed, then months. Communication channels established with Earth went silent. Trading posts operated by humans in neutral space were quietly closed, their operators returning to Sol without explanation. Concerned, the Council dispatched a Vrian observation fleet to human space. Commander Vra's ships, sleek, powerful, and equipped with the finest technology the ancient Vrian civilization had developed, approached the outskirts of the Sol system with confidence bordering on arrogance. "Primitive defenses," Vra remarked, as his sensors detected the standard orbital platforms Earth had declared to the Council years ago. "Nothing that poses a challenge to—" His tactical officer interrupted, "Commander, additional contacts appearing everywhere." Where there had been empty space moments before, hundreds of platforms now revealed themselves a quantum detection array that had somehow masked its presence until now. Smaller ships blinked into existence around the Vrian vessels, their designs unlike anything registered in Council databases. "Vrian Fleet," came a transmission in perfect Vrian language. "This is Captain Nancy Bell of Earth Defense Forces. You have entered sovereign human space without permission. State your intentions immediately or withdraw." Commander Vra was too stunned to respond immediately. These defenses hadn't existed 6 months ago, at least, not visibly. Had the humans been concealing their true capabilities all along, or had they achieved this advancement in mere months? "We come under diplomatic authority of the Galaxy Council," Vra finally responded. "We demand to speak with human leadership." Captain Bell's reply was immediate. "The Galaxy Council has no authority in human space. You may send 1 unarmed vessel to Earth Orbital Station Artemis for diplomatic exchange. The remainder of your fleet must withdraw beyond Neptune's orbit. You have 10 minutes to comply." For the first time in his long career, Commander Vra felt uncertainty. The humans were not behaving like a species that had been cast out. They were acting like one that had planned its independence all along. Meanwhile, far from Sol and the Council's watchful eyes, Jack Daniels had embarked on a different mission. The embassy of Krill Prime, a world that had itself rejected Council membership centuries ago, received Earth's former ambassador with cautious curiosity. "We understand your frustration with the Council," said Matriarch Vila, her insectoid features unreadable. "But why come to us?" "Because you thrived without them," Jack replied. "And because I believe we can offer each other something valuable, true partnership." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy as human diplomats reached out to independent worlds and disaffected Council members. Admiral Miller's strategy was taking shape, not isolation, but alternative alliance. Within 6 months, the Mutual Prosperity Alliance, or MPA, held its first secret summit. Representatives from 15 non-council worlds met with humans to establish trade agreements, defense protocols, and research exchanges based on equality, rather than age or tradition. "We offer technology sharing without oversight taxes," Jack explained to the assembled delegates. "Defense cooperation without hierarchical command structures. Trade relationships without one-sided tariffs." "And what do you want in return?" asked the skeptical representative from Dratha Prime. "Partners," Jack said simply. "Not subjects, not mentors, equals." The MPA grew silently away from Council attention, as more worlds recognized the benefits of Jack's approach. Within a year, 27 worlds had signed the foundational charter. The Council, meanwhile, had more pressing concerns. Reports from the outer reaches of known space spoke of a new threat, the Void Horde, a previously unknown species with devastating biological weapons, and a seemingly endless supply of gray-skinned shock troops. The Council debated response strategies with their usual methodical pace committees, forming to study the potential threat. They were still debating when the Horde struck Helios 9, a Vrian colony world near the galactic rim. Chancellor Zextrol called an emergency session as reports of the attack reached Istral Prime. "Our sources indicate complete overrun of outer settlements," he informed the Council gravely. "The colonial government requests immediate military assistance." "The Horde's biological weapons are neutralizing Vrian defense systems," added military advisor Thresh. "Standard protocols are proving ineffective." "How soon can a Council fleet reach Helios 9? Demanded the Vrian secondary ambassador, his scales flushed with alarm. With current deployments and necessary preparations, Thresh consulted his data, no less than 14 standard days. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. 14 days was a death sentence for Helios 9. "Perhaps," Ambassador Kuval's voice cut through the noise, "we should consider requesting assistance from alternative sources." Zextrol's inner eyelids flicked rapidly. "If you're suggesting we beg the humans for help..." "I'm suggesting we recognize reality," Kuval countered. "Our intelligence indicates the MPA has established a rapid response force. They have ships closer to Helios 9 than our nearest fleet." "Preposterous," Zextrol sputtered. "The MPA is a trade arrangement at best, not a military power." But even as the Council argued, the MPA was already moving. Admiral Jason Peters, commanding the Joint Human Draft Defense Fleet positioned in the Proxima sector, had received the distress signals from Helios 9. "All ships battle stations," Peters ordered. "Deploy jump coordinates to the fleet. We launch in 30 minutes." The MPA response force, 47 ships from 6 different species, led by human tactical coordinators, arrived at Helios 9 less than 30 hours after the initial attack. They found a world in chaos, the Void Horde's forces, pushing toward the central colony with terrifying efficiency. "They're using some kind of biological agent that disables electronic systems," reported Colonel Howard from the ground team. "Vrian defenses are useless against it." "Deploy the shield generators," ordered Peters. "Get our ground teams to the colonial center with the countermeasures." The specialized shield generators, developed through collaboration between human engineers and Drath biologists, created bubbles of protected space where the Horde's bioweapons couldn't penetrate. MPA ground forces, equipped with specially designed armor, established evacuation corridors for trapped colonists. From orbit, the fleet executed precision strikes against Horde concentrations, avoiding civilian areas with surgical accuracy. The battle was fierce, but the MPA's combined strengths, human adaptability, Drath, biological expertise, Krill tactical experience gradually turned the tide. 3 days after the MPA's arrival, the Council's relief fleet finally appeared in the Helios system, prepared for a desperate rescue mission. Instead, they found the Void Horde in retreat, MPA ships, conducting cleanup operations, and the colonial capital secure behind new defensive barriers. Admiral Vex of the Council fleet could hardly believe the reports. "The situation is contained." "Affirmative," replied Captain Bell, who had joined the MPA response. "The colony capital is secure. We've established quarantine zones around areas affected by biological agents. Civilian casualties were limited to the initial attack." The Council representatives were escorted to the Colonial Government Building, where they found Administrator Javix of Vrian, of considerable age and status, in conference with Colonel Howard and the MPA coordination team. "Admiral Vex." Javix acknowledged the Council officer with obvious relief. "Your arrival is welcome, though I must recognize that without the MPA's intervention, you would have found only corpses and conquered territory." Vex struggled to maintain his composure. "The Council is pleased that assistance was available." However, we must question the jurisdiction under which these forces operated in Council space. Colonel Howard stepped forward. We responded to a distress call from civilians under attack. If you'd prefer we had waited for proper jurisdictional clearance, I suggest you explain that to the 10,000 colonists who would now be dead. The effectiveness of the MPA's response and the Council's comparative failure could not be hidden. News spread quickly throughout Council worlds transmitted by colonists, rescued by MPA forces, by merchants who had witnessed the battle by the MPA itself, through its growing communication networks. On Istral Prime, the Council chamber that had once dismissed humanity's potential, now buzzed with rumors and recriminations. How did they develop these countermeasures so quickly? Demanded one ambassador. Sources indicate the shield technology was already in development, replied military advisor Thresh uncomfortably. The MPA apparently maintains research initiatives specifically focused on emerging threats. While we were forming study committees, muttered a Drath representative, who was increasingly sympathetic to the MPA's approach. High Chancellor Zextrol found himself on the defensive for the first time in decades. The Council has maintained peace for millennia through careful deliberation and wisdom. One successful military action does not validate the humans' reckless approach. But the damage was done. The Council's aura of invincible authority had been punctured. More damaging still were the rumors that several Council races were now secretly sending representatives to discuss MPA membership. The final blow came when the Drath Collective, one of the founding species of the Galaxy Council, publicly announced its intention to withdraw and seek MPA membership. The recent events at Helios 9 have demonstrated that adaptation and action must take precedence over tradition and deliberation when lives are at stake, the Drath announcement stated. We can no longer in good conscience remain bound to a system that values age over effectiveness. 3 more species followed within days. The Council, which had stood for over 4,000 years, was fracturing before Zextrol's eyes. The emergency session that followed was unlike any in Council history. The chamber echoed with accusations and demands for reform. Ambassador Kuval finally rose to address the desperate assembly. We have lost our way, the ancient Eldarin stated simply. In our certainty that age confers wisdom, we forgot that youth brings innovation. In our commitment to stability, we became stagnant. A motion of no confidence in Zextrol's leadership passed with unprecedented support. The High Chancellor, his inner eyelids fluttering in distress, had no choice but to tender his resignation. In his place, the moderate Telax and Eldaran, known for his progressive views, was elevated to interim leadership. His first action was to open direct communication with Earth. Jack Daniels, now serving as Foreign Secretary of the MPA, received the transmission in his office on Earth. The message was concise, an invitation for humanity to rejoin the Council with revised terms, 12 systems, no oversight tax, and a seat among the inner circle. Earth's response came as a public broadcast rather than a private message. Jack appeared on screens throughout Council space. High Chancellor Telax esteemed members of the Galaxy Council. He began his expression solemn. Earth acknowledges your offer with appreciation for its improved terms. However, we must respectfully decline. Gasps echoed through the Council chamber as Jack continued. The MPA now includes 43 worlds with 12 more in the process of joining. Our combined economic output exceeds that of the remaining Council worlds. Our defense capabilities have been demonstrated at Helios 9 and 6 other engagements with the Void Horde. Jack paused, allowing the implications to sink in. Therefore, rather than rejoin the Council, we extend an invitation to all Council worlds to apply for membership in the Mutual Prosperity Alliance. A new charter is being drafted that will preserve the valuable elements of galactic cooperation while ensuring equality among all members regardless of age or origin. The broadcast ended, leaving the Council in stunned silence. 2 months later, on the neutral world of Proxima Beta, representatives from 117 worlds, including all former Council members, gathered for a historic summit. The Galaxy Council formally dissolved itself, and in its place, the Galactic Cooperative was born. The new charter, drafted jointly by former council legalists and MPA innovators, established a fundamentally different approach to interstellar relations representation based on population rather than age technology, sharing protocols with reasonable protections but no punitive taxes, and a rapid response force modeled on the MPA's successful structure. In a private moment during the celebrations that followed, Ambassador Kuval sought out Jack. "When you removed your translator and walked out that day," the ancient Eldarin said, "I knew we had failed. It took courage to walk away." "It would have been easier to accept the terms," Jack admitted. "But easier isn't always better. The cooperative will face challenges the Council never imagined," Kuval observed. "The Void Horde remains a threat. Other dangers lurk in unexplored regions." "We'll face them together," Jack replied, "as equals." 5 years after humanity's withdrawal from the Galaxy Council, the Galactic Cooperative held its first formal summit on Earth, a symbolic acknowledgement of the humans' role in forging a new path. The chamber within the summit dome in Geneva bore little resemblance to the hierarchical arrangement of the old council. Here, delegates sat in a true circle, with no position more central or elevated than any other. Above the main entrance, the cooperative's motto was displayed in all member languages: "Progress through unity." Jack Daniels, now serving as Earth's cooperative representative, delivered the opening address. 5 years ago, we faced a choice between acceptance of unfair terms or an uncertain path forward alone. We chose uncertainty, not out of pride, but out of belief that a better system was possible. One built on merit rather than age, cooperation rather than domination, innovation rather than tradition. He gestured to the assembled delegates, representing over 100 worlds. "Look around you. Former enemies sit together as partners. Species that once competed now collaborate. Technologies that were hoarded are now shared, advancing all our civilizations faster than any could progress alone." The most visible symbol of this new era was unveiled the following day: Harmony Station, a massive orbital platform constructed at the Earth-Moon Lagrange point through the combined efforts of 12 species. At its core lay a multi-environmental garden where plants from across the galaxy grew together in carefully maintained habitats. "Some called our withdrawal a reckless gamble," Jack remarked to Admiral Susan Miller as they observed the station from a viewport on the transport shuttle. "They said we couldn't survive without council support." "Those same voices said the MPA would collapse within months," Miller replied with a smile. "That different species couldn't work together without the council's oversight." Alan Cooper, now heading Earth's Technology Exchange Office, joined them at the viewport. "The real secret weapon wasn't our hidden ships or the quantum array." "No," Miller raised an eyebrow. "It was our willingness to treat others as equals," Cooper said. "Amazing how far that gets you in the galaxy." Jack watched as dignitaries from dozens of worlds mingled in the shuttle's passenger compartment, humans alongside Vrian's Drath, beside Eldarins, even a cautious representative from a recently contacted edge of the Void Horde who had come to discuss peace terms. "Was there ever a final phase of the protocol?" Cooper asked quietly. "After forming the MPA, after bringing down the council?" Admiral Miller and Jack exchanged a knowing smile. "There was no final phase," Jack replied. "Only beginnings." The shuttle docked with Harmony Station, and the assembled representatives of the galaxy entered the new era together as equals. The void beyond held dangers, still certainties and uncertainties alike. But they would face them not as a hierarchy of the ancient and the new, but as a cooperative of diverse strengths, the wisdom of age, and the innovation of youth combined at last. Ambassador Jack Daniels stood at the observation deck of Harmony Station, gazing out at the blue-white jewel of Earth below. 5 years after humanity's bold withdrawal from the Galaxy Council, the view still took his breath away. The sprawling orbital construction around him represented everything the old council had failed to achieve: genuine cooperation among diverse species, technological innovation unrestricted by age-based hierarchies, and a defensive capability that had repeatedly proven its worth against the Void Horde. "Admiring your handiwork again?" Paula White's voice came from behind him. His former aide had become Earth's intelligence director, coordinating information flow across the vast network of cooperative worlds. "Just reflecting," Jack replied. 5 years ago today, I walked out of the council chamber." Paula joined him at the viewport. "The boldest diplomatic no in human history. I still remember how terrified I was." "You hid it well." "Not well enough, apparently," she smiled. "Though I'm glad I was wrong about the consequences." The Galactic Cooperative now encompassed 123 worlds, with more applying for membership each month. The rigid, stratified structure of the old council had been replaced by a flexible framework that allowed for cultural differences while maintaining core principles of equality, mutual defense, and technological exchange. "The Vrian delegation has arrived," Paula informed him, "including former High Chancellor Zextrol." Jack's eyebrows rose. "I'm surprised he accepted the invitation. He's no longer in power, but he still holds influence. His presence lends legitimacy to the proceedings." Jack nodded. Zextrol's appearance at the 5-year anniversary summit was significant, a tacit acknowledgement from the old guard that the new order had succeeded where they had failed. The Void Horde threat had been contained, if not eliminated, and trade throughout cooperative space had increased by 300%. Even the most skeptical former council members had been forced to recognize the benefits. The subtle chime of Jack's communicator interrupted his thoughts. "Daniel's here." "Ambassador," came the voice of his current aide. "The security briefing is about to begin. Admiral Miller requests your presence." "On my way." Jack straightened his uniform, a simple blue design that had become the standard for Earth's diplomatic corps. "Duty calls." Paula walked with him toward the central hub of the station. Around them, representatives of dozens of species moved through the wide corridors, their various physiologies accommodated by the station's adaptive architecture. Translator implants were still used, but they were now standardized across all species, with no single language designated as primary. "Any news from the Edge territories?" Jack asked as they walked. "Our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures near the Perseus Gap," Paula replied. "Could be nothing, could be something. The Science Directorate is analyzing the data." "The Horde again?" "Unlikely. The patterns don't match their technology." She lowered her voice. "This is different, possibly something we haven't encountered before." Jack nodded thoughtfully. Despite the cooperative's success, the galaxy remained largely unexplored. New threats and new opportunities emerged regularly from the vast unknown. They reached the tactical center, where Admiral Susan Miller was already briefing a diverse group of military leaders from across the cooperative. "Ambassador." Miller acknowledged his arrival. "We were just discussing the Perseus anomalies." The holographic display in the center of the room showed a three-dimensional map of cooperative space, with a flashing marker at its edge. "Whatever it is," Miller continued, "it's big enough to distort subspace in a measurable way. Dr. Alani's team estimates the energy output would be equivalent to approximately 3,000 of our most advanced reactors." Jack studied the display. "Natural phenomenon." "Possibly," replied a Drath scientist, her translator, converting her aquatic tones to standard speech. "But the pattern suggests intelligence. There are regularities that seem purposeful." "A new civilization making first contact," suggested a Vrian commander. "Or a very old one returning," added Dr. Alani, her aged Eldarin features creased with concern. "The archives mention ancient races that left known space millennia ago." "Whatever it is," Miller concluded, "we need to establish contact cautiously, but openly. I propose a joint expedition, scientific and diplomatic, with appropriate defense capabilities." The meeting continued for another hour, establishing protocols for the expedition and contingency plans for various scenarios. Jack found himself impressed once again by the efficient cooperation among species that had once barely tolerated each other under council rule. As the briefing concluded, Miller pulled Jack aside. This could be the cooperative's first major test since the Horde conflicts. Or its greatest opportunity, Jack countered. Remember how the Council would have handled this years of committees and deliberations before taking action? Miller smiled. While whatever's out there could have invaded half our worlds. Exactly. Jack checked the time. I should prepare for the opening session. Zextrol will expect me to acknowledge his presence. Going to be awkward? Miller asked with a hint of amusement. Diplomatically challenging, Jack corrected with a wry smile. But that's the job. The Summit Dome's main chamber was already filling with delegates when Jack arrived. The circular design, with no elevated positions or central authority, stood in stark contrast to the hierarchical arrangement of the old council. Species that had once been relegated to the outer rim now sat alongside the eldest races as equals. Jack spotted Zextrol immediately. The former High Chancellor had aged visibly, his silver scales dulled somewhat, but he still carried himself with the dignity of his 8 centuries. Jack made his way through the chamber, greeting various delegates until he reached the Vrian section. High Chancellor, he said, using the honorific out of courtesy, rather than protocol. Your presence honors us. Zextrol's inner eyelids flickered briefly, once a sign of irritation, now perhaps merely acknowledgement. Former High Chancellor, he corrected. And Ambassador Daniels has become Representative Daniels, I understand. Some titles change, the work remains the same. Indeed. Zextrol studied him with ancient eyes. I must admit, when you removed your translator and walked out of my chamber 5 years ago, I did not foresee this outcome. Few did, Jack acknowledged, including many humans. Your approach has proven more effective than anticipated. The admission seemed to cost Zextrol some effort. The cooperative has achieved in 5 years what the Council failed to accomplish in its final centuries. Coming from Zextrol, this was extraordinary praise. Jack inclined his head respectfully. Different times require different methods. The Council served the galaxy well for millennia. Until it didn't, Zextrol replied simply. Age does not always confer wisdom, it seems. Sometimes it merely calcifies prejudice. He gestured toward the gathering delegates. This arrangement has proven more adaptable to emerging threats. We've been fortunate, Jack said modestly. Prepared, not fortunate, Zextrol corrected. Your species planned this from the beginning, didn't you? The withdrawal was strategic, not emotional. Jack considered his response carefully. Let's say we had contingencies in place for various outcomes. The Council's final offer simply activated one of them. Clever. Zextrol's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. I look forward to your address, Representative Daniels. Perhaps I will learn something new at my age, a rare pleasure. As Zextrol moved away to join his delegation, Ambassador Kuval approached. The ancient Eldarin had become one of the cooperative's most respected voices, his millennia of experience tempered with an unusual openness to change. A civil exchange with Zextrol, Kuval observed. Progress indeed. He's adapted better than I expected, Jack admitted. Survival often depends on adaptation, Kuval gazed around the chamber. A lesson my species learned long ago, then forgot, then remembered again. The cycle continues. And the Void Horde, have they adapted to peace? The treaty holds, Kuval replied. Their representatives speak of mutual understanding now, instead of conquest. Whether from genuine change or pragmatic necessity, the result benefits all. The chamber's ambient lighting shifted, signaling the session's imminent start. Jack excused himself and made his way to the speaking platform, a simple circular stage that could be accessed equally from all sections of the chamber. As he waited for the formal introduction, Jack reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The decision to walk away from the Council had been calculated, but still fraught with risk. Earth might have found itself truly alone, vulnerable to threats it couldn't counter without allies. Instead, the bold move had catalyzed a reformation that few had imagined possible. Representatives of the Galactic Cooperative announced the session moderator Akrill, whose species had been among the first to join the MPA, I present Earth Representative Jack Daniels. Jack stepped onto the platform and gazed out at the assembled delegates, a tapestry of different biologies, cultures, and histories, united not by fear or tradition, but by choice. 5 years ago, he began. Humanity made a difficult decision. Faced with terms we couldn't accept from the Galaxy Council, we chose to walk away, not in anger, but in the belief that genuine cooperation requires genuine equality. The chamber was silent, hundreds of translator implants, conveying his words simultaneously to all present. We didn't know then what would follow. We hoped for partners but prepared for isolation. We anticipated resistance but found resonance. Species across the galaxy had long recognized the Council's limitations, but lacked a catalyst for change. Jack paused, making eye contact with delegates from various sections, including Zextrol, whose attention seemed unusually focused. The cooperative we've built together isn't perfect. No system designed by imperfect beings could be. But it has proven more resilient, more innovative, and more just than what came before. Together, we've repelled the Void Horde, increased prosperity across member worlds, and developed technologies that benefit all our peoples. He gestured toward the viewport where Earth was visible against the backdrop of space. Today, as we face new anomalies and potential contacts at the edges of known space, we do so not as a hierarchy divided by age and origin, but as a united coalition drawing strength from our diversity. The rest of Jack's address outlined the cooperative's achievements and acknowledged ongoing challenges, including resource distribution inequities and cultural integration difficulties. He proposed initiatives to address these issues and invited all delegations to contribute to the solutions. When he concluded, the chamber erupted in the varied sounds of approval from dozens of species. Even the Vrian delegation, including Zextrol, performed their traditional scale rippling gesture of respect. As the session moved on to technical reports and committee formations, Jack rejoined Admiral Miller and Paula at the Earth delegation section. "Well received," Miller commented, "even by our former antagonists." "Results are persuasive," Jack replied. "The cooperative's success has vindicated our approach in ways rhetoric never could." Speaking of results, Paula interjected, "The Perseus expedition has been approved. 15 ships from 12 species departing next month." That fast. Jack was impressed. Under the old council, such an expedition would have required years of planning and political maneuvering. The science directorate fast-tracked it after detecting additional anomalies, Miller explained. "Whatever's out there, it's expanding its presence. Hostile. Unknown, but definitely powerful." Miller's expression was serious. "The Drath representatives suggested you might consider joining the expedition." Jack blinked in surprise. "Me, I'm not a scientist or a military strategist." "No, but you are the architect of the cooperative," Paula pointed out. "If this is first contact with a new civilization, having you there could be valuable, especially if they're trying to determine whether we're worth engaging with." The proposal was unexpected, but not entirely unreasonable. Jack had extensive experience with cross-species diplomacy and had proven effective in high-pressure negotiations. "I'll consider it," he said finally. "Let's see what additional data comes in." The session continued through the day, with representatives from various worlds presenting updates and proposals. The efficiency of the proceedings, so different from the ponderous deliberations of the council, still impressed Jack even after 5 years. That evening, a reception was held in the Grand Observation Deck, where delegates could mingle less formally, while enjoying the spectacular view of Earth and the lunar surface. Jack found himself approached by a surprising figure, Admiral Vex, who had commanded the Council fleet that arrived too late at Helios 9. "Representative Daniels," Vex greeted him, offering the Vrian gesture of professional respect. "A moment of your time." "Of course, Admiral." Jack led them to a quieter area, near one of the smaller viewports. "I've been assigned to oversee the Vrian contribution to the Perseus expedition," Vex explained, without preamble. 3 ships, including my flagship. A significant commitment, Jack acknowledged. Yes, Vex seemed uncomfortable. I've also been informed that you may join the expedition. I wanted to clear the air between us. Jack waited curious. My arrival at Helios 9 after your MPA forces had already secured the colony was the most humiliating moment of my career, Vex admitted. For centuries, the Vrian fleet was considered the protector of civilized space. To be outperformed so thoroughly by a coalition of younger species. It wasn't a competition, Admiral, Jack said gently. We all served the same purpose, protecting innocent lives. Perhaps. But the lesson was valuable nonetheless, Vex straightened. If we are to work together on this expedition, I wanted you to know that I harbor no resentment. The cooperative method has proven superior in these times. I have adapted my thinking accordingly. I appreciate that, Admiral, Jack replied sincerely. And I look forward to working with you should I join the expedition. As Vex departed, Ambassador Kuval appeared at Jack's side. Another former adversary reconciled, the Eldarin observed. You have a talent for it. Not me, Jack demurred. The cooperative itself. Success is persuasive. Perhaps, Kuval's ancient eyes twinkled with something like amusement. Though I suspect removing that translator implant and walking out required more personal courage than you admit. Jack smiled. A calculated risk. The best kind. Kuval gazed out at the stars. Will you join the Perseus expedition? I'm considering it. The unknown has always fascinated me. As it should. Kuval's voice took on a more serious tone. The patterns emerging from the Perseus Gap. They remind me of stories from my people's earliest histories. Tales of beings who existed primarily in subspace, whose physical manifestations were mere shadows of their true nature. Jack looked at him sharply. You think we're detecting a species from Eldarin myth? Myth often contains kernels of truth, Kuval replied. My ancestors spoke of encounters with beings who could fold space and time, who existed simultaneously in multiple realities. They called them the precursors. That sounds concerning. Or promising, Kuval shrugged his ancient shoulders. The tales speak of both destructive encounters and beneficial exchanges. Much depended apparently on how the precursors judged the civilizations they encountered. Judged? Yes. The stories suggest they valued certain traits, adaptability, cooperation, across differences, ethical innovation. Kuval gave Jack a meaningful look. Precisely the qualities the cooperative embodies. The implication was clear. If the anomalies represented the return of these mythical precursors, the expedition might face not just a first contact, but a test of worthiness. I believe I will join the expedition, Jack decided. If these precursors are real, and if they're judging us, they should see who we've become. A wise choice, Kuval approved. Though perhaps you should know that I've already volunteered to represent the Eldarin worlds. We'll be colleagues on this journey. Jack laughed. Planning to keep an eye on me, Ambassador? On the contrary, I believe we'll keep an eye on each other and on whatever awaits us in the Perseus Gap. Kuval's expression grew distant. New beginnings, Representative Daniels. Always new beginnings. 2 months later, the Perseus expedition departed from Harmony Station, 15 ships representing 12 species, led by the Earth Vessel Cooperation. The journey would take them to the very edge of explored space, where the mysterious energy signatures continued to grow stronger. On the command deck of the Cooperation, Jack Daniels stood beside Admiral Miller, Ambassador Kuval, and Admiral Vex as the fleet entered its final jump sequence. All ships report ready, announced Captain Nancy Bell from the helm station. Jump coordinates locked, initiating in 3, 2, 1. The stars blurred around them as the fleet made the transition to hyperspace. Jack felt the familiar momentary disorientation. Then stability returned as the ships re-emerged in normal space at the coordinates of the Perseus anomaly. The main view screen lit up with a sight none of them had anticipated. Before them stretched what appeared to be a massive gateway, constructed of energy, rather than matter, its swirling patterns, reminiscent of both mathematics and art. Beyond the gateway Glimpses of another space entirely. Perhaps another dimension flickered tantalizingly. Sensors detecting multiple energy signatures approaching from the gateway, reported the tactical officer, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. Shapes emerged from the energy field, beings composed of light and shadow, with forms that seemed to shift between different geometries. They moved toward the fleet with purpose, but without apparent hostility. "We're receiving a transmission," the communications officer announced. "It's being transmitted directly to our translators." A voice, or perhaps many voices in harmony, filled their minds through the translator implants. "We are the precursors," it said, confirming Kuval's ancient tales. "We have watched your evolution with interest. The cooperative you have formed shows promise a balance of the wisdom of age and the innovation of youth, of unity and diversity." Jack glanced at Kuval, whose ancient features showed both vindication and wonder. "We departed this realm when the council was young," the voices continued. "We return to find it transformed. You have chosen a different path, one of genuine cooperation, rather than hierarchical domination." "We seek peaceful contact," Jack responded, unsure if they could hear or understand him. "An exchange of knowledge and culture." There was a pause, as if the beings were considering his words. "The gateway before you leads to realms beyond your current understanding," they finally replied. "But not beyond your potential. We offer an invitation not to submission or servitude, but to expansion and growth." On the view screen, the gateway pulsed, its energies shifting, to form what appeared to be a map of sorts, a pathway to new discoveries. "This is but the first step," the voices concluded. "How you proceed will determine future interactions. Choose wisely, cooperative of the younger realms." As the transmission ended, the light beings retreated back through the gateway, leaving the fleet facing the pulsing energy field and the star map it displayed. Jack looked around at the assembled leaders from across the cooperative beings, from species that had once been enemies, or strangers, now united in this moment of discovery. "Well," he said with a smile that combined wonder and determination, "it seems we have an invitation to consider." Admiral Miller nodded. "And a new beginning to explore." Always new beginnings. Kuval echoed his earlier words, his ancient eyes alight with the prospect of discoveries that even his long life had never anticipated. The cooperative fleet held position before the gateway, its diverse crews united by common purpose and shared curiosity. Whatever lay beyond challenges or opportunities, dangers or wonders, they would face it, not as a hierarchy of age and origin, but as equals bound by choice and mutual respect. 5 years after walking away from an unfair offer in the council chamber, Jack Daniels stood at the threshold of something far greater than he had imagined possible. The decision to withdraw, to reject the established order, and forge a new path had led not to isolation, but to this moment of unlimited potential. Sometimes, he reflected, the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a bad deal and trust in your ability to build something better. And sometimes the galaxy rewards that courage beyond all expectation.